Hello, one and all. Titus O'Reilly here. Apologies, we hadn't had the podcast out the last little bit. I've actually been incredibly unwell. This is the first day I've been out of bed in about a week. And on top of that, I've had my new book due and everything. So it's been an absolute disaster. So we'll be back to normal programming next week. And Serge should be back he said he had to go sort out a few people who were trapped in a cave, Elon Musk style. Haven't heard from him since. But we should be back next week, no problems. But for today, I had a podcast in the can from a while ago, which is an interview with Ashley Browne, who many people know. He works at AFL.com, writing a lot of stuff, does a lot of the record. And he's got a great book out that's just come out recently, People of the Boot. So we chat about that and a whole bunch of other things around footy. So hopefully this makes up for a lack of podcasts in the last few weeks, and it has been a bad time to miss with all our fun in the Philippines and most importantly England getting knocked out of the World Cup. That was an especially fun moment this morning, and perhaps is why I feel a little bit better today. Not just the fact we can all make jokes at their expense, but the fact that English people react to them really adds an extra spring in my step. So apologies, it's been a bit all over the shop, but I can assure you I would have preferred to have been doing this. Enjoy the chat with Ashley Browne. He's a great guy, and I think this is really worth listening to. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Variety Hour for a very special episode. We're going to be talking about a new book that's just come out with the editor, Ashley Browne. Ashley is a senior writer, is that the right term?
Senior writer, yes.
At AFL Media.
Yes, working out of HQ, with the independent media arm of the AFL, Titus.
Independent. It has often stories that I think, oh, maybe it's more independent than people think.
It is. We like to think we can do. We can go into some issues that make the AFL and people. We certainly make the clubs uncomfortable from time to time. A lot of clubs don't like us all that much.
I thought your Sack Gillen campaign was really out there.
Yeah. Did you see that one?
No, I haven't seen that one yet. And you love China and hate Tasmania. But apart from that, you're very pro.
I actually wrote a piece of record where I took the AFL to task a bit on Tasmania and actually let the grassroots Tasmanian people have their say in the record, and that got through. So
you do the record as well, which many people listening would know.
Yeah, so I'm actually, during the season, I'm sort of mainly on the record and a bit on the website.
And so would you be the editor of the record?
No, Michael Lovett is the editor of the record.
And so you're just one of the key writers for it.
Ben Collins and myself are the sort of major writers for the record.
And Ben's been on this before because he wrote The Red Fox.
Your Bible.
My Bible biography on Norm Smith, which is a terrific read.
Ben did a fantastic job with that, so...
Now, you've just come out with this book. This came out about 3 weeks ago?
Yeah, about 3 weeks ago we finally got it.
And it's called People of the Boot. It's the triumphs and tragedies of Australian Jews in sport. And it is available at peopleoftheboot.com.au if people are interested. And there's a special code from when this podcast comes out that if you enter BOOT in capitals as your promo code, you get how much off?
You get 10% off.
10% off. Look at that. Don't say we don't ever do anything for you. Now, it's an interesting... You edited it.
Co-editor. I must give Dash Lawrence my...
Dash Lawrence as well. So
it's a two-person...
And it is a really quite interesting topic. I'm surprised. Has there been anything written like this before?
Not in Australia. There's a fantastic book came out about 5 years ago in the States called Jewish Jocks. And it was a lot of the really great writers from New York Times and New Yorker and The Atlantic and broadcasters all wrote about sort of their Jewish sporting heroes almost, but it was very much just sort of an appreciation of those guys. We've taken that approach. We've actually made them, in just about every case, interviews and profiles with the people we've written about. And there's a few subjects as well. They're not all profiles. There's a couple of issues we've explored as well. So, but this is the first time in Australia. So there's been histories written about other parts of the Jewish community, but not sport.
Not sport particularly. Now, you said it took you 3 years to pull this together.
Yeah, pretty much. It was sort of Dash approached me to do it, and I didn't quite have the headspace to do it at the time. And then about sort of 3 or 4 months after he first came to me I sort of got back in touch with them and said, yeah, look, I think this has got legs, but it just took a long time to get off the ground. To make it work commercially, we had to go to the community and get some funding from people and sort of find a way to make it worthwhile for the funders. So that took, once I had all the funding in place, I was able to I had the writers ready to go, just waiting for the green light from me. And then as soon as I had the funding model in place, I sort of got in touch with the writers and said, righto, we're good to go. So.
And you said when you were telling people about this book that you were doing a book about Australian Jews in sport, the response you got was, which is very much the stereotype, it's going to be a short book.
Yeah, it must be something thin. It's our line from Flying High.
Yeah.
Light reading material. So yeah, we got that. We only got that about 150 times.
And did you know when you started this that had you bought into that stereotype, or did you know enough about the Jewish community and their involvement with sport to know there was a lot there?
Well, I knew there was a lot there. That's why part of the reason why I wanted to do the book, because as much as the joke's funny, it's also every time I hear it, I think, well, actually, we do have a really good story to tell.
Yeah,
it just needs to be told now. So, and most of I've been asked a few times already. Did I have to go and search all the stories? In just about every case, I knew there was a story in this. Because I'm a journalist for a long time. I was editor of the Jewish News for 3 years, so I knew some of the stories that came across my desk then. And I've sort of written sport for them on and off for 25 years. So a lot of the stories I knew. It's just a matter of actually putting them all in one place and finding the right people to tell them.
So this was it was pulling together a sort of a lifetime of things you knew into the, finally actually drilling down.
It's a brain dump. It's now 26 chapters in a book.
And when you sent out when you chose all, because there's some great writers, young writers, and for all ages really of writing in this, when you sent out and sort of briefed them about it, so you've written a chapter, but Daniel Cherney has written one, Sam Landsberger has written one, Russell Jackson, who's a great writer. There's a heap of people that, a lot of people, sports fans would be familiar with their stuff. Ronnie Lerner, I know, has written one. Harvey Silver, you got to write a piece. So there's some terrific pieces in here. When you sort of went to these people and sent them out, did you sort of brief them on what stories to cover, or they picked it, or what was how did that work?
I sort of had the rough idea. In most cases, I had the rough idea, and I said, I think, like, using example, Daniel Garb, for example, from Fox Sports. He's travelled with the Socceroos for the best part of 60 years, and he'll go with them to Turkmenistan, pretty much wherever they go. Yeah. So he really knows the people there. So when I say to him, I want you to go and profile Frank Lowy and talk to him about his contribution to the game, he knows enough people to ask the right questions when he actually gets the interview with Sir Frank Lowy. Yeah. So that was important. So it was mixing and matching some people. And there are a couple of people that I just wanted to write for. A couple of writers. It was Timna Jacks from Fairfax in Melbourne. So I wanted her to write a piece, and we came up with a great chapter for her. And another woman in Sydney, Lexi Landsman, who used to work for me at the Jewish News, who's now a novelist. But I thought, and it's partly commercially, but I know if people like Lexi are writing for it, people in Sydney, because it's a national book, not just a Melbourne book. People in Sydney who know her name are going to maybe pick up and buy a copy because they know she's written for it. So it's a bit of marketing, and by being able to pay the writers for their work, it's not like I've done freelance jobs on the cheap or for nothing occasionally as a favour to people. You just bash it out, but the fact of being able to pay the writers a reasonable freelance fee, they really invested in it and took a lot of care with the work, which is what I wanted as well. When
you're editing something like this and you kind of know the subject area a fair bit, did people come back with stuff that you learned? Like, did you come back and go, I didn't actually know that? Or
in just about every chapter, there was stuff that I didn't know. Like one example, a guy called Robbie Foldvari, he was at one stage was a champion. I knew he was good. He was a billiards world champion, but I didn't know that at various stages he was a world champion across about 4 or 5 different 8-ball and 10-ball and snooker and the whole thing. He was a world champion at a lot of different sports, and I didn't know the differences between all these games. So the chapter on Robbie really explains the different sort of games that we can go and play. I just thought it was pool, snooker, and billiards. Yeah, there's actually variances of all of those. Yeah, which we were able to explain in the book. So that's stuff I didn't know. And we've got a chapter on this mother-daughter who climbed 7 summits, including Mount Everest from Sydney to Barts. And again, just what it takes, how you prepare to climb Mount Everest. Yeah, I never read the John Krakauer books or anything like that. So it was the first time I sort of really read about what it actually takes to climb Mount Everest.
That'll be exhausting.
Yeah.
Tired thinking of it.
These were a remarkable one. Cheryl, the mother, she sits on about 8 different boards in Sydney, including the Football Federation. Her daughter, Nikki's a cardiologist.
I hate overachievers like that because they make me feel small.
In their spare time, they climb every mountain there is. So,
well, to be honest, I got out of bed today, so I've done well. So it seemed when reading this, we mentioned the joke, but that people say, "Oh, it will be a small book," but at the same time, like when I looked at it, and not only there are a lot of stories. What is amazing about it is you mentioned right up front, and I had to double check this online, that there's only 100,000 Jewish people in Australia. It's, that's shocked me how I thought it would be more. I mean, living in Melbourne, and I used to live in St Kilda East, and which is every second person was Jewish there. It's very, very high profile area for some of the best Jewish schools and things like that there. But it's a very low number, so it's actually kind of amazing what impact such a small group have actually had on sport rather than the other way around.
Yeah, and they come from a low base in a way because it's a largely immigrant community, or certainly since between the two world wars and afterwards, and very much I've seen a lot of immigrant communities just about come here, don't worry about sport, just come here and get on. Let's build a life first. Get an education. Get on with your life, and sport is not something we need to worry about. So there's that handicap as well. Now, as it's less of an immigrant community now, and we're all second, third, fourth generation. We're into and as obsessed by sport as any other group and community in Australia. But it took a while, so we were coming off a low base as well.
And what was the experience when they came here? Because until very recently, there were a lot of clubs and groups that really didn't accept Jewish members at all. What was the experience of the Jewish community coming here?
Well,
and there
was a bit of that as well. So not being part of the best golf clubs, tennis clubs, and what have you initially. So that's why the Maccabi movement in Australia has become as big as it is, because it was a club that the community could start.
So talk us through that as a movement for people who might not know.
So Maccabi is the worldwide Jewish sports organisation, and some basketball people might know Maccabi Tel Aviv is one of the great European basketball clubs. Has won the Euro League a few times. Maccabi Australia has state divisions and clubs going right through, particularly New South Wales and Victoria. A lot of people know the Ajax Footy Club that plays in the VAFA.
Yeah.
And there's the North Caulfield Maccabi Soccer Club that plays out at Caulfield Park. They're really well known. So that's all part of Maccabi. So the book, we talk a bit about Maccabi in the book, and a lot of the people in the book got their start through Maccabi, but the idea of the book was actually to celebrate those who've gone above and beyond Maccabi and on the big stage. But without Maccabi, a lot of these people wouldn't never have got their start in sport in the first place.
So they were set up because there were partly because there were places they could play.
Yeah, partly also, but the Frank Lowy chapter talks about this as well. That particularly with soccer, a lot of the ethnic groups started their own teams anyway. They were comfortable mixing with their own. So the South Melbourne Health being the perfect example.
Yeah.
Soccer in Melbourne. Juventus was a great soccer club in Melbourne for a long time.
Yeah.
Sydney, there's been clubs as well like that. So people were very comfortable mixing their own groups anyway. They weren't necessarily restricted from other clubs, but they felt comfortable being amongst their own, particularly as an immigrant community. So and that sort of continued down the path now. So you've got Jewish athletes playing at a number of clubs now in Victoria, not just from the Maccabi clubs, but a lot of people still feel very comfortable playing for Maccabi.
You mentioned Ajax. In the VAFA down here in the amateur, you got a chapter in there of their club, and Mark Williams, a former premiership coach at Port Adelaide, has gone and joined there as a coach.
Yeah, so we sort of did the reverse of what a lot of the books about the Jewish athletes who've gone and excelled above and beyond, but we thought it was a good story to be told about a high achiever in sport decided to come and get involved in the Jewish community. So,
how did that come about?
Well, he'd left Richmond and he didn't actually have a job, and Ajax was looking for a new coach, but Victoria Maccabi, which is the roof body for Maccabi Victoria, they had the money set aside by the estate of the late Henry Jolson, who was a well-known Melbourne QC and a great sportsman. They had a money set aside for. They wanted to do a pathways program. They wanted to have better coaching and better athlete development, and to try and encourage more of the talented Jewish athletes to stay within the Maccabi framework all the way through. Because a lot of the really talented ones will leave Maccabi to go and play elsewhere, to get noticed, pretty much. So they had this money to get some elite coaching. So then along comes Mark Williams. The footy club found out he was that he was potentially interested in coaching there, and they sort of got in touch with the Maccabi people, and they had the money for this bigger program, so they sort of made it work. So he's sort of now employed, they're not full-time, but significantly employed by Maccabi in leadership and athlete development, coaching development, and to coach the football club as well.
And what impact has he had?
Well, not so much this year. They're struggling. As we record, they've only won 2 of 6 or 2 of 8 so far this year. But I mean, he's certainly raised the standards of the football club. It's a very, as much as an amateur club can be. I mean, the programs and facilities are as good as any amateur club. But I think across Maccabi, just for coaches to have access to, and his background is in teaching and in PE teaching.
Yeah.
So I think for all the Maccabi coaches across the whole organisation, I mean, the coaches of the Maccabi netball team can access him for, to learn how to. He's not going to run their drills for them, but they can certainly talk about, okay, how do we empower our athletes? How can we develop an elite playing culture at our club? And that's what he's been really good at.
Yeah. I heard he wanted to have meetings on Friday nights.
Yeah, that's right. He said when he joined the footy club, great, we're going to take this seriously. We're going to have team meetings Friday nights. And he had to be reminded that Friday night in the Jewish community are a no-no because it's the Friday night dinner, it's the Shabbat dinner. It's sacrosanct, even for non-observant Jews. It's when you have your big, like a lot of Sunday lunches used to be. So it's he quickly was reminded that you have to have those meetings on Thursday night after training.
It doesn't really work, though.
That's right.
It's like culture shock.
But he's been fantastic. He's been very embracing the community. He's endeavoured to learn about the community. He went to the Holocaust Centre not long after he took the job and was really moved about what he experienced there. So he's come to understand the people and the community he works with. And it's a good fit because he's a non-drinker and Jews basically aren't drinkers as well. So it's a very good fit.
Because we had the book launch last night. We're recording this on a Friday. And there were some great stories told on the night of the book launch. And you mentioned the Holocaust. There was a lot of people on stage whose parents mainly had been directly affected by this. To many people that's old history.
Yeah.
But when you talk to some of these sports people and people in the Jewish community who are in this book, it hovers in the background with a lot of them too. Yeah, they talk about the impact sport had.
Yeah, well, so Frank Lowy, he was, I think he was from Czechoslovakia and the old Czechoslovakia, and he survived the Holocaust, went to Israel first, found his way to Australia, and he sort of had this immigrant mentality of just wanting to work hard to make a life for himself, and he made a very nice life for himself and his family. And part of that was his passion for soccer that he had. So he worked hard, but sort of had a soccer team to follow, and it went from there. And then. Yeah, we've got the story in the Russell Jackson's chapter about Jewish boxers. He's got the Nissen brothers, who Henry and Leon Nissen, who were great fighters. Leon was the amateur, and Henry was the professional who fought in the 60s and early 70s.
They had a fascinating. They were talking last night. Yeah. They were very funny as well.
Yeah, I think they've got a bit of shtick going, but they're very good. I mean, that chapter's interesting because I thought we had to have the Nissens in the book, and then Russell wrote this fantastic profile in the Guardian.
Yeah.
So I basically went to Russell and said, "Listen, can we just use that and add a couple of other people we think should be in the chapter?"
Yeah.
And he worked out that we could. So a lot of the part of that is just basically based on what Russell wrote.
Well, he's a great writer too.
He's a great writer, and a pleasure to work with. But then he was a guy called Sol Spitalnik, who was an amateur boxing official for a long time, who at the '84 Olympics was a team manager, and he had to basically, one of his jobs was to hand out the stipends to Jeff Fennick.
Right.
And Fennick wanted all the money straight away. He wanted his whole stipend up front. As soon as they got to LA, he wanted all his money, and Sol initially said no. I think Fennick got a snake and put it in Spitalnik's room to try and scare him to give him all the money. So, old Sol, to his credit, sort of stood his ground, and eventually they came to some sort of agreement over all that. So, and then there's a guy called David Ovett who sort of gate crashed the proceedings last night, but he had a fascinating life. He was the bodyguard for Shimon Peres, who was a leading Israeli politician. Then went to America to fight because someone said, you're a Jewish boxer, you can make a fortune in New York. Come to New York and fight. So he went to New York and fought for a while.
Yeah.
And then eventually came out to Australia, and he used to fight in the early days of TV ringside. And it wasn't until he lost to George Bracken, who many people know is one of the great Australian boxers. And then he sort of decided that he'd had enough and he'd get on with his life. So
that was enough of that.
Yeah, had enough of being, he said he lost once, and he lost his nerve a bit. And as soon as if you're a boxer and you lose your nerve straight away, that's when you should walk away.
Yeah, they always say that boxing ring's the loneliest place in the world.
Yeah.
Once the bell goes and you're just facing off
But
against someone.
David had loads of great stories to tell.
Frank Lowy is amazing, just the way he got brought in by the government after that 2003 report into Soccer Australia and all the problems there.
Yeah, and he explains in the book, he said, he was the president of Sydney City who dominated the old National Soccer League in the 80s, and they won a premiership in 87 or 88, and they were losing so much money, he basically withdrew them from the competition.
Mm.
And he said it cost him a lot of friendships, and even a multi-millionaire can lose friends if you're not doing the right thing. And he walked away from the game, had no involvement with the game for 15 years, and then John Howard tapped him on the shoulder and said, "You're the guy to fix." The report came out about all the problems with the old National League and Australian Soccer Federation as it was, Soccer Australia, and he said, "You're the guy to fix it." And he was close to Howard, and he said, almost as a favour to John Howard, he agreed to do it, and he very quickly, fell in love with everything again. And he's the guy who drove the A-League. He's the guy who put the resources in place to help Australia get to the World Cup in 2006 after the 32-year drought.
Well, they were amazing times for soccer in this country.
It was. I know you're a soccer fan. It was for those few years. It was fantastic. We all fell in love with the sport again.
Yeah, it's a bit wobbly at the moment.
Yeah, it is. And he mounts in the book a passionate defence of his son Stephen, who's now the FFA president. And basically, Frank says in the book, you can say what you like about Stephen, but he's the only one who put his hand up. The clubs have made a lot of noises about governance of the FFA, but when they were given the opportunity to put someone forward to replace me, they didn't do it. Stephen's the only one who did. Now, I know I've been advised there's a bit of spin in this, and there's a very strong counter argument against, and our friend Francis Leach will has told me a couple of times of the strong counter argument against all that. But Frank initially put his money where his mouth is, and we want to tell that story in the book.
I think the thing that's happened with so when Frank came in, they really did need someone who was dictator's too strong a word, an autocratic. I'm the boss. I make the decisions. I've set the direction. They really needed someone who was strong-armed the whole sport because they were so fractured. So they weren't healed, or they were too divided for. You either needed someone to come in and just make them all go in the one direction, or it wasn't ever going to work. And I think Frank's style really worked so well that then the success came, and then suddenly everyone was like, well, we want less of that, being told what to do, or more democracy in this sport now. And it's almost like making that transfer is the troublesome bit where
it's not a wartime prime minister, isn't it?
I think that's exactly right. Like, it's sort of, and now they're sort of almost getting back into the wartime setting because of all the disagreements, and but they haven't had that massive crisis like they did back in after the Crawford report, which really sent it spinning.
I don't know enough about the way the game's run to know whether what's happening there now is good or bad, or whether they should be divorcing themselves. I know FIFA's getting involved, which is great.
That's always a worry.
No, I don't know whether this is a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know enough about it, but I do know that what we want to record in the book was the difference he made initially in 2005, 2006.
Well, which is significant. You can't take that away. That was, huge. And like you say, he put a lot of money into the sport.
A lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of clout. And I mean, the angle that interests a lot of the Jewish readers was, here's a guy who's outspokenly pro-Israel and very supportive of Israel and puts a lot of money in Israel, going into the meetings with all the Asian football people. A lot of them are sheiks and that sort of thing, who from countries that have no relationship with Israel.
Yes.
They're technically are at war with Israel, and here they are sitting out in a room and
they negotiated to join that federation.
Yeah, and that's right. So the question was asked. My one question you talked about with the editors, my one question brief to Daniel Garb was asking what it was like as a proudly Jewish, strong supporter of Israel to go into the room with these people.
Yeah.
And he gave some good acts. He said, they knew my background and we almost rarely had disagreement on anything. We were there to talk about the game, and I actually became very friendly with a couple of these people, which is really interesting.
It is interesting that sport, especially, there's one of the great things about, football is that it does cross those international boundaries, and it's both a pro and a con, because you look at FIFA, sometimes the ways it's run. I often think, you're running an international sporting body like the Olympics or FIFA.
Yeah.
Can you run it in a non-corrupt way when you're often dealing with a lot of countries that are inherently corrupt?
Right,
Can you stay out of them? But it also, on the plus side, it brings these communities together in ways that they normally wouldn't have any contact with each other.
Yeah, and certainly I think, you could be very critical of a lot of the people from FIFA over the journey, but I think a couple of the more sensible people, I think Lowy and a couple of the others were more sensible people who got involved, and we got to, certainly as far as Australia was concerned, there were some very good outcomes from him being involved.
Absolutely. Tell us a bit about Jessica Fox, who people might remember from the London Olympics.
Yeah, well, she, from the this, again, stuff I didn't know. I knew that she had to be in the book, and I
because she won silver in the canoe.
Yeah, she just turned up in London. All along, she thought that Rio would be her opportunity to win a gold medal, but then she turned up to London and just do you call it a race or?
It's a Salem, and it's against the clock. So
her times are unbelievable. She just performed really well in the silver medal, much to her surprise. And then she backed up with the bronze in Rio, but she's still quite young. I think she's I think Tokyo, she would see she's still very much a contender. Her sister Naomi's now emerging as well, but they're a third generation. They started in Europe with their grandfather, was their sport. Her father, Richard, was a British competitor for Britain. I think her mother, Miriam, competed for France. Richard and Miriam got married and came to Australia initially on a 2-year contract to sort of grow the sport here, but found they enjoyed living out in Penrith. They're the only Jews, I think, in Penrith, by about 50 kilometres away from the rest of the city Jewish community. But they were happy here, and the girls were happy here, so they decided to stay and invest in this country. So, again, she's one I didn't know much about, but I just knew she had to be in the book, and Carly Adno from the Daily Telegraph in Sydney did a really good job of sort of profiling her and explaining the sport. Yeah,
it's a great story, especially just you do get the sense that she wasn't really expecting much.
No, it was when she got to London and it all sort of worked out for her.
Yeah, perfect timing. You cover a really interesting bit about basically a lot of the people who there's been quite given it's such a small population, there's been a lot of Jewish presidents of various clubs in the AFL, especially. Joseph Gutnick, we'd remember David Smorgon. Richard Pratt was at Carlton, obviously, as a big benefactor. So, the AFL seems to have been something that, there's a big Jewish Melbourne community. It seems to... You can't live in Melbourne, can you, and not almost... It's a religion in its own self, almost.
Well, it is a religion. You and I are both of test spite. And again, we haven't produced a lot of players. I think we've had 10 players over 125 years have come directly from our community. But
who would be the best Jewish AFL player?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, now you're getting all technical. I mean, in terms of
who do you think?
Well, Ian Simmons got the record in having played in a grand, having played in the premiership in 130, 40 games for St Kilda or whatever it was. But if you're now looking at the more progressive strains of Judaism, say it doesn't matter. As long as one parent's Jewish, you're Jewish, which then puts Todd Goldstein into the mix. So Todd Goldstein's father's Jewish.
Right.
He's now played 200 games for North.
So he technically wouldn't count under some...
But he couldn't go to Israel and get citizenship, which is a criticism of Israel, but because his mother's not Jewish.
Yeah.
And so the Orthodox rabbis wouldn't consider him to be Jewish because you take it from your mother, not your father.
Right.
But certainly from Maccabi's point of view, that accepts. Goldstein would come play for Ajax tomorrow. He'd be first ruck and centre half forward and centre half back. So you would argue that for a lot of people would now say, well, Todd Goldstein, because he's got a Jewish father. So he'd be the other good player. But because of their involvement in things like business, for example, they've found their way to leadership roles in the game. So which was the chapter I wrote about in 1997. Both David Smorgon and Joseph Gutnick in vastly different ways ended up becoming presidents of their club. So that's sort of the focus of my chapter. You'd remember the Gutnick era.
I remember it very, very well. It was
bizarre.
Well, so he came in as he was a real saviour at the start, especially. Yeah. I think a lot of Melbourne fans have fond memories of Diamond Joe, as he was known, because he was someone who put his money where his mouth is, and But what's your view of his legacy?
My view of his legacy is that I think I've got to a little bit over subsequent to that, but I think he was harshly treated in a lot of ways because when the club was really floundering, he came in and put his money in, and there was an undercurrent. I think we don't. There's the stereotype about Melbourne being the club of the establishment, but I think it does ring true. And I'm really interested in your views on this as a Melbourne man. There are elements of the business and the establishment community who were never really comfortable with someone like Joseph being the chairman of the club, so there were always elements looking to undermine him. But from my observation from having covered footy at the time was the rank and file Melbourne supporters, the ones who sit in the Great Southern Stand, as opposed to the ones who sit in the MCC members, actually really liked him. Yeah. And I think he actually started moving the club back to the people a little bit. Yeah. He did some foolish things, and he was ill-advised at times and naive because he didn't have a background in the game. And once and I think he did the right thing in calling for spill the board when he did, because he had to basically get rid of the people undermining him. But as soon as the anti-group got Robbie Flower involved, he was never going to win.
Yeah, that's right.
So that was all over. You don't lose anything with Robbie Flower running. So, but I think he gets harshly treated a little bit. Or I thought he was harshly treated. I mean, he's never really gone back to the club since then. He's sort of Jim Stein. He always got on with Jim Stein. So Jimmy tried to invite him back a couple of times.
I think he was. I think your synopsis was right. I think people, the rank and file, the members, saw him as someone who was at least a massively passionate Melbourne supporter who came in and put money in and did all that sort of stuff. So I always
passionate supporter who never went to games.
But. Yeah, that's right. But but in terms of putting his money in and coming in when they needed in the most. Yeah. So that there was a lot of. Yeah, Melbourne is a weird club. Like it's. I think it's only it's weird that it's the club of the establishment, but has managed to, despite that, be completely unsuccessful. You would think, most clubs you would think who are in that position could sort of engineer, and they used to be able to engineer success out of that. So I think one of the best things that Melbourne's ever done is get people like Peter Jackson and Glenn Bartlett to an extent who are not technically Melbourne people. It's been the best thing for them,
look outside the club.
Well, the success doesn't rest within it. So I think that's been one of the things that they've needed to do. And I think there were times there where they didn't want anyone they perceived as an outsider for whatever the reason. They just kept going back. I mean, Steins and Lyon and all this. They were always talking about those people all the time. Like there was some golden era they represented, and I always found it perplexing myself.
Yeah, no, I think Joseph came at the right time, and I think he should be well regarded in the history of the club. I mean, he did some dumb things. I mean, going on the radio and bagging Neil Bum at half time of a game, which I write about in the book.
Yeah.
Ill-advised.
Just slightly.
And but then he did some things. He basically, I think at one stage he went to the AFL and said to the board when the whole salary cap stuff was blowing around some other clubs, he went and said, I want to go on an audit of us, and if we're guilty, we were going to come forward and take advantage of this amnesty. And there were people at the club who didn't like him because of that, because Melbourne was doing as much as anybody else at the time. So it was also those elements of games. And the people didn't like him just because he's the president. We don't see him in a lot of games. Yeah. The people didn't like him because of that. But a fascinating time. And then David Smorgon, who was a lifelong Bulldog supporter who did go to games, the big family Smorgon empire was broken up, and he found he had the time on his hand, and the club was really in trouble. It was reeling, and we told the story in the book about him going to a banker in Collins Street who basically said, "You got 30 days, or we're going to wind you up. If you want our money back in 30 days," and he had 30 days to save the club. And that tumultuous summer where he changed the name, changed the jumper, changed the home ground, with some other people as well. Yeah. And what that was like.
And huge role in keeping the club going. I mean, that's been the story of the Bulldogs for so long, just kicking the can down the road basically until their more recent success.
And really, all he really did, they had some reasonable success on the field, but even in his time, all he was doing for most of it was keeping the wolves from the door. And it wasn't until they turned around and won the premiership. Even now they only say, we've got 10 years of security now out of this premiership, but if they go back to being the old Bulldogs, then
which doesn't
might be the case the way they're going. Who knows what they'll be like in those 10-15 years down the track. But, he certainly laid the steel of spade work success they had in the last few years.
Yeah,
and he talked about being on the ground at the end and being part of that and how he felt about it.
Well, I thought that was great to see that they had him, and all that was good. I was there that day. Were you there at that game? And There's something about, even if you don't barrack for that team, seeing a team break huge droughts like that and seeing the supporters, and it's really nice.
I've been really lucky. I've been in West Coast. I was in West Coast Friends years ago when they won their first premiership. That was like a corporate entity having a good profit result. It wasn't a lot of heart
wasn't quite the same,
about it. But I was in the rooms when the Swans broke their drought. And I was in the rooms when Geelong broke their drought. And I was in the rooms when Bulldogs broke their drought, which was fantastic. We're absolutely privileged to be in there. And obviously in working capacity, but just to see the enjoyment. And I've known David and I've known his family for a long time. And I saw them in the rooms, and it was just, you've got a personal connection with some people who've been through it all. It was wonderful. I was really happy for the Dogs when they won it, and for people like David for what they've been through.
You also talk about Richard Pratt at Carlton.
Yeah, Howard Cotton did the chapter on Richard Pratt, and Carlton, a lot of people know Carlton is sort of the Jewish club, I suppose, because there was such a large pre-World War II Jewish population in Carlton. So Carlton became their club, and as the Jews became more affluent and moved away from Carlton, most of them took their allegiance to Carlton with them, wherever they lived. It took them till about 2004 or 5 to have the first Jewish president, which was Graham Smorgon, and he found it really tough. At one stage, he wanted to hand the keys in the AFL. That's how dire thing. I mean, you and I growing up, the fact that Carlton being such dire circumstances, because they used to be the club. They were rich and powerful and arrogant. And
yeah, I mean, I've said this before, but if you say, I remember when Carlton were a dominant premiership winning club, it dates you now. You're in your 30s and 40s. You're not. You're no longer like there's 20-year-olds that would go, really? Was that?
Yeah, Carlton were good.
Carlton were good ones, were they?
But he had a really hard time. Then Richard Pratt took over, and got Chris Judd. Well, we've got Greg Swan from. I want the best CEO, so he headhunted Greg Swan away from Collingwood. And then he wanted. We needed the best player, and so he went and got Chris Judd.
Thanks to his commitment to the environment.
Yeah. He didn't want to stop at Chris Judd. He basically said, okay, now I want to get Pavlich as well. He had to be told, no, it doesn't work like that. It's not the old days of Carlton where you just go
buy who you want.
But what he brought Carlton was hope, and I think Howard relates that in the chapter that he brought just some hope to Carlton. I mean, obviously it was going to be a long way back for them, but he just made them. Yeah, and even a coat of paint at Princes Park, which at Visy Park as it was, it had become a really tired, dated facility. Yeah. So that's why he gave them optimism for a while.
Well, after John Elliott, it was a real depressed place for a long time.
Yeah, I mean,
it still is.
Yeah, Elliott ran the place into the ground. The Elliott administration didn't really get the times.
Yeah, that's right.
Did they?
Well, I think, I'm actually writing my second book, and there's a little bit on Elliott in there. And yeah, it's pretty, when you read it again all fresh, it's pretty damning, some of the stuff around there.
Just didn't get the modern, didn't get drafting, didn't get...
It's very interesting because he was such a product of the 80s, along with the Scases and the Bonds and all those various, sort of corporate high flyers that built a lot of their empires on debt. Yeah. And then suddenly, but he was the survivor that sort of made it through to an extent.
Yeah, I don't know if you've written this, but I mean, building that legend stand.
That's the
big mistake. And he was told, don't build it because you might be playing games here in 10 years. Oh, well, of course we will. We're Carlton. We'll do what we like.
Yeah. That and the salary cap cheating.
Yeah.
Sort of the double whammy of those.
That's right. So it just put the club back so far, and some would say
they're still sorting that out, a lot of the financial stuff, and it's never really recovered.
Yeah, so it was a really hard job for Graham Smorgon, and Pratt came in, and maybe Pratt only papered over some cracks in the end, but for a while there, Carlton were up and about, and then they had that fantastic final a few years ago when they beat Richmond. But so that's sorry, you couldn't write a book on Jews and sport without having a Carlton angle to it. From a commercial point of view, Titus, it gets you...
Is that out of all the sort of professional sporting teams, Carlton would be the biggest in terms of supporter groups?
Carlton, St Kilda in Melbourne. I think in Sydney, the Roosters have got a very big...
The Roosters, yeah.
And a lot of... and Sydney FC got a big Jewish following.
Yeah.
I think Lowy owned that for a while.
Yeah, he did,
Somehow he owned a team in the league at the same time.
Yeah.
And I think again, a lot of the South African community in Sydney, a lot of South African Jews, the Waratahs as well, got a fairly big Jewish following as well, but certainly Melbourne, it's Carlton, St Kilda.
Yeah. Well, talking to someone who owns a league and a team in it, Larry Kesselman as well.
Yeah.
You have he's the man that liked the league so much he bought it.
The Victor Kian of Australian sport. Yeah, but again,
He's an amazing story what he's done at the NBL.
Yeah, it is, and it was a sponsorship of, and he's made his fortune, and he.
So Dodo was his
Dodo and property, and he wanted to impress his cousin, who was a big fan of the Melbourne Tigers as they were. So when his cousin was away, I think he came back and said, "Oh, while you're away, I became the naming rights sponsor of the Melbourne Tigers." And then he decided he enjoyed that so much that the opportunity came to buy the club. He did, and he had a big fallout. Might be too harsh, but the Gaze family, who obviously control the Melbourne Tigers, he wanted to change the name, and they said no, it's not a good idea. But then he changed the name anyway to Melbourne United, and then,
that was a huge moment. And at the time, a lot of people thought very foolish. Yeah. And the Gaze family were quite angry about it.
But the smart, because apparently the Melbourne Tigers junior basketball team dominates, and everyone doesn't like it or something like that.
Well, I think also, there's been a lot of, if you've been an NBL fan over the years, especially in Melbourne, there were the North Melbourne Giants, there was the Spectres, there was the Magic, there was the Titans, there was the Dragons, there was, so you had this disparate supporter group, and then you'd all seen, like, I was an old North Melbourne Giants fan, and then they went belly up, and then I didn't really pick another team, and I didn't really want to go for the Tigers.
Yeah, I was a Giants fan as well,
because I used to barrack against the Tigers, so I think that was Larry's sort of view. But then he once he became owner, he was so tired, wasn't he, of the way the league was run. He just thought it was run terribly, which wasn't wrong.
He was actually approached by the league, and I think he knocked him back the first time. Then a couple of years later, decided, okay, I'll do it now. But he's done an amazing job. But it's interesting because we've seen a lot of people, really successful in business who buy a sporting team, not just around the world as well. In the States, they just lose their mind once they buy a sporting team, and all the smart decisions that govern their business careers they forget about when they become fans.
Is that the emotion?
I think it's emotion, but he seems to be very grounded. He seems to be making the right business decisions. He's still thinking as a businessman.
Yeah.
In every step he takes with the league, and he's seen these enormous opportunities for growth, but he sees the dollar and cents value in what he's doing, as opposed to just because he's a huge fan. I mean, he loves the game, but he still thinks first and foremost as a businessman. What I like about this chapter, Titus, is that I found a guy, Adam Gerwich, who's not actually he's not a writer, but he knows a lot about basketball. And I sort of said, if you've got the knowledge to write this chapter, I'll help you knock him to shape. And he did a fantastic job with that, because the guy, he works in event management, but he knew well enough to...
don't tell people this writing caper is easy, or we're going to be... that anyone can do it.
Yeah, but he knew the right questions to ask Larry Kesselman, and he gave a really good interview and came back, and we sort of knocked into shape together. So really pleased with that chapter. And Larry's, there were a lot of Soviet Jews arrived in Australia in the 70s and 80s, and in a lot of cases, even today, they're still a bit... isolated from the rest of the community. They haven't quite sort of become part of the mainstream Jewish community, but we thought we had to get Larry in anyway. So,
well, I mean, he's really turned that league around, and there's talk he might sort of divest his ownership of Melbourne United over time, just because
that's probably a good idea.
Having the person who owns the league own a club is never an amazing position to be in. But the turnaround in that league in the last 2-3 years.
It's extraordinary, isn't it?
It really is. You just feel it's... I mean, I remember looking at Melbourne United in the most recent season, and I was going to go to a game, and I went to look... I wasn't a member, so I went to look at buying tickets, and, the next 3 or 4 games were sold out completely. And then after that, there weren't great tickets left. Like, it was kind of amazing. Yeah. Basically they can almost fill it now just with members.
They play Margaret Court, don't they?
Yeah, and they've moved up. They're at High Sense for a while, and then I think Margaret Court.
Might start going back to Tennis Centre again if they get.
Well, it used to be those. They played a few games there with the roof open, I think. But remember those glory days when that? Yeah, it used to be huge. That's getting down to those.
No, he's done a super job, and again, it's a story of an immigrant come to this country and doing well, and then sort of taking on sport as one of the things I want to get involved in when they're in a position to do it.
The other one that's kind of interesting, if we go north of the border up to the NRL, is Todd Greenberg, who is the CEO. A lot of people, if you're not a rugby league fan, wouldn't know. He's got one of the hardest... He was at Canterbury Bulldogs as CEO before that, but he's got one of the hardest jobs in Australia because the new the Rugby League Commission that's been brought in, a bit like the Rugby League has only just got around to what the AFL did/VFL did back in the early 80s, which was put in place an independent commission. They've now tried that, but it hasn't. The clubs have not loved it.
The NRL's a gift that keeps on giving to you, isn't it?
Well, I mean, to be honest, the AFL does a bit too.
Yeah.
There's no shortage in either. Sometimes I feel like they're in a competition of who can outdo each other.
He a couple of things about this chapter that I really like. Firstly, I mean, David Weiner, who wrote it, really introduced it well. That I think it was the finals last year that Greenberg had to give a dressing down to a couple of coaches. It was just ref bashing in the NRL. I mean, it's just what you do. And he basically said, we've got to stop this. We've actually got to. We can't grow the game. Game can't be what it could be if there's just no respect for officials. So that became a really big story at the time he did the interview. But the thing I loved about this chapter was Todd Greenberg. It's September. Anyone who works in AFL, NRL in September, it's the busiest month of the year.
Yeah.
He did his first interview. He found an hour in his diary in September for David, and then they only got halfway through what David wants to talk about. So he went out to his parents and said, can you find another hour in my diary for David to come back and have another chat? So in September, he gave up 2 hours of his time to talk because he wanted to be part of this book. He thought it was really important to have his story told in the book. So we got really good buy-in from a lot of the subjects who, Frank Lowy and Larry Kesselman and 2 other examples.
Yeah, the people you got to interview are amazing.
Yeah, they really gave their time to do it. So, And
do you think that was an understanding that this is a important project that captures something that hadn't been there before?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's pride in community and, sort of sharing my desire that, our sporting heritage be told as well as our other things that we've done as a community that have been well chronicled. So I was really happy that the way that chapter turned out. He was very, very giving of his time. So he's got a very hard job. The NRL is a different beast to the AFL, and there are always elements conspiring against whoever's running that game, and you only just follow people like Buzz Rothfield on social media to know that there's huge pockets of anti-Greenberg support out there. People who just, no matter what he's doing, he's not doing a great job. So it'd be a tough job. I reckon it'd be a lonelier job than Gill's got, I think, running the AFL.
Well, I think the AFL's also a bit more used to having an independent commission over a long period of time. It's also, at the moment, got a lot of money in it, and so there's no clubs on the verge of going belly up, and they're all fairly well off. Like the NRL, there's a lot of where's all the money going.
Yeah, you see the anxious over stadiums and, what's the future of the suburban grounds.
So although their ratings are good this year.
Well, beating the AFL, aren't they?
Well, that's because
not hard.
That's because you guys keep putting Carlton on Friday nights.
I'll take no credit for that one. I work for the AFL, but I've divorced myself from that one.
It's been it's not all their. That's not the Carlton's fault, but I like to blame them even if it's not their fault. Yeah. What was because there's stories in here, everything covered from baseball to boxing. We talked about. It covers media and business. It's got the mountaineering chapter, which is about the women you mentioned who climb those peaks. Rugby union, soccer, table tennis. The table tennis chapter is interesting. That's by Josh Kay.
Yeah, Susie Javor, who, if you strip her, she might actually be the greatest. I mean, she came out to Australia as an immigrant when she was already an established player, but she might be the greatest sporting product we've produced in terms of how dominant she was in table tennis for a very long time. She's the only table tennis player in the Sports Australia Hall of Fame. So that would suggest she's the best player.
Is she the only Australian to play table tennis sober?
Probably. Her and her son. So
when you see them play the really good, they are amazing though. I don't know how I genuinely don't know how they do it.
There's one that went viral the other day on Twitter, just a rally. It was incredible.
Yeah.
I didn't know how many shots it was, but Susie's story is really good as well. There's a couple of stories I'm really proud of in that one. The obsession for our community for a long time, Titus, was Michael Klinger's mistreatment at the hands of the Australian selectors.
Yeah.
And
Was that more to do with not being from New South Wales?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, he had
you can never tell it's discrimination, but what particular one was it?
And also not having the surname Marsh, I think. Probably
that's
played
right.
against him as well. But
you got to be a Mitchell, a Marsh, or both, or from New South Wales.
Yeah.
Then otherwise, because Victorians feel like we get looked over all the time here.
Yeah. So he sat down with Ronnie Lerner for about an hour last April, and Michael is a very quiet, unassuming sort of guy, but he actually sort of, for the first time, spoke about his frustration. And he said there were times when I was making runs, and I kept shifting the goalposts. One stage, he was too old; they wanted to play the kids, and then other times with all these averages and his average
depending on whatever,
yeah, but that was look at his lifetime average when he wasn't doing so well for Victoria. Then if you looked at his average over the last 3 or 4 years, he was the most informed batsman in the country.
Yeah,
and 50 players got at one stage when he was dominating domestic cricket. 50 players got picked for us
ahead of him.
And the way it's portrayed in the book, I mean, it's quite damning that for whatever reason they just refused to pick him. And eventually he did get picked for the 3 T20 games last year, and just what a breakthrough it was and how it was celebrated in the community, because for a long time we all lived, like in my generation, we lived our life vicariously through Julian Weiner, who's also in the book.
Yeah.
And then for a lot of people, in the 20s and 30s, it was through Michael Klinger. And we would obsess over his, every time we went out to bat, he made a century. We'd feel great. Oh, he's one step closer to playing for Australia.
Yeah.
And it never happened for so long. So,
although it wouldn't be the first time a group of people have been bewildered by the Australian selectors' decision-making process.
Anyone south of the Murray usually flummoxed by some of their selection decisions.
Yeah, I often.
Brad Hodge. I love Brad Hodge to take the Aussie pill one day and say what he thinks.
Well, I always got the sense with him that there was just. I mean, the thing when I've spoken to a few ex-cricketers who are a bit more willing to talk off the record at least, so without giving anyone away, but the tensions within that group, if you're not sort of getting along, they almost select some people who aren't as good, but everyone else likes them, So it is a bit of a.
I reckon there's certainly a bit of that. And
there's a lot of that going on in there.
The Victorians seem to be the ones who, and I think the South Australians to a degree as well, the ones who sort of. Maybe it was the wrong move to go from Victoria to South Australia from Queensland. If you'd gone to New South Wales or Queensland.
That's right. That's what he should have done. It's funny, I saw Justin Langer, though. Adam Gilchrist was saying Justin Langer's going to pick people who he would feel were the type of people he'd consider letting marry his daughters. I thought, this is the oddest criteria. I'm not making any runs, but, you'd be quite happy with my daughter, me marrying your daughter.
Has anybody read the Ronald Fishman book comes to mind? No, it's 25 years ago. But the other chapter I'm really proud of, before we finish up, is the chapter that Tina Jacks did on the Maccabee Bridge collapse, which sort of takes it back to a Maccabi.
Yeah, so I remember this. I remember this event very well at the time. So perhaps if you could just take people through it who might be a bit younger or not remember this moment. But this has got a lot of coverage, I remember, at the time.
Every 4 years, they have the Maccabee Games, which is worldwide. It's like the Jewish Olympics. It's actually probably the third biggest sporting event in the world after the Olympics and the Commonwealth Games in terms of numbers. And Australia sends a team.
In terms of participants, you mean? Yeah.
Yeah, and every 4 years, Australia sends a team, and it's largely self-funded, so people have their own pockets to go and represent the country, and they play across a number of sports. In 97, the Australian team went to Israel and bridge over the Yarkon River to the main stadium at Ramat.
Is it always held in Israel?
Yeah, it's always held in Israel.
Right, yeah.
And it's always held until now, it's always been held at this same stadium. And the bridge carrying the Australians, because being the first one, they were the first team to clear onto the stadium.
Yes.
And the bridge collapsed. And 4 Australian athletes died. A couple instantly, a couple
from injuries later on.
And illness, because the river was it was a river in name only. It was just
a drain.
It was, pretty much just stagnant water with chemicals in it. And so 4 Australians died, and a few others were seriously injured. And 20 years on, the scars still remain, and the families, the 4 families plus one other family that was affected, the trauma remains. And Tina did a really good job of speaking to the family members about their experiences at the time.
It is an amazing chapter, I just brought back to me the vision and everything of that. Seeing that for the first time.
Yeah.
And the fact that you kind of move on from these events if you're not directly involved in them. So it's kind of interesting being brought back to it
this
much later.
And it was typically, like most Australian Jews identify very strongly with Israel, and we were so disappointed. It was, but the Israelis can have a bit of a laissez-faire attitude. Think that'll be all right, and that was the attitude in building the bridge. It was basically it was a set construction, theatre set construction. People made the bridge, so it was never ever going to withstand the weight of people, and it was never properly tested. And it took a very long time. There was a lot of buck passing in Israel before the government finally stepped in and said, "Righto, we're going to compensate these people." Some really searing examples in the book of some of the hoops that families had to
a lot of anger comes through,
and to get their money that was rightfully theirs. And it drove a real wedge between the Australian Jewish community and Israel for a time, and that's largely been healed now. But I mean, David Grace, who launched the book last night, David Grace was the rising star of. He was the Australian guy who was going to become the president of the Maccabi World Union. Yeah. He was so disgusted with what happened, he walked away from the organisation. David's now put his energies into things like Athletics Australia and defending Ben Cousins, the Essendon players and what have you. But I mean, he's a leading QC. But, he walked away from Maccabi just appalled at what took place. But it was really important, I think.
And not just the event, but all the follow-on.
Yeah, all the follow-on as well. So it did drive a wedge for a long time. And we just thought it was worth revisiting. It sort of stands out a little bit from the other stuff that we've written, because a lot of it's celebrating triumphs. We thought it really is worth revisiting the story after 20 years.
But you kind of can't. It was one of those stories you kind of can't tell this story without it. I think the book would be a hole in the book if that wasn't there.
I don't use the word tragedy in writing about sport in my book, because nothing happens in football. It's a tragedy.
You haven't watched Melbourne play the last 20 years? No. No, I know you mean. But this was not... It was at a sporting event, but it was a real-life
tragedy. So we just thought it was worth putting it in a book. Tim did a super job. So, I don't think the book would have been complete without
that. Would have been a hard chapter to write. Because some of the other ones were kind of amusing or interesting or fun, but that was a real... You felt like having to go and interview, and all those things was...
She put a lot of effort into that. It was a hard chapter to edit because we had to make sure everything was right and in the style in which she's written it. I mean, we had half the book was legal because we just wanted to make sure. But that was the one that we went over with a fine tooth comb, even though it was 20 years after the fact and all the judgments and things passed down. It was sort of, we wanted to make sure everything was right.
Yeah, it's a pretty heavy burden to make sure you get that right. That one. Well, it's a terrific book. I felt like not only did I learn a lot, but it's actually just very entertaining. But some real insights into. There's a few lenses you can read this through, because not only is it interesting to just see the Jewish community's contribution to sport in Australia, but also you're also just getting some insights into some of the key people that are doing currently or have done amazing things. Like we talked about Lowy and we talked about Kesselman and these various people. So you get some insights into the various worlds that kind of exist out there, the things that are actually happening in the Australian sporting universe at the moment.
And I'm happy to inspire people, the young people in our community who, might be good at sport but aren't sure how seriously to pursue it. I'm hoping it'll encourage them to go down the path and trying to be really good at sport.
You talked about, being obviously, often with immigrant communities, the focus is on academic and becoming lawyers and doctors. And you talk a bit about this, all the doctors that have worked for football clubs and stuff like that too, which is a bit like, reminds me of the rugby union stories where that was the safest place to have an accident because everyone, there was about 20 doctors on the field. But do you think that's changing in the community? The Jewish schools, do they have better? Are they got more of a focus on sport than they used to? Are there facilities there? Or
they've got facilities. I'm hearing that it's mixed at some of the schools. I think Mark Williams is actually having a positive effect because he's starting to go into the schools now and work with the Jewish schools.
Yeah,
but certainly the doctor, lawyer, accountant mentality is not quite as strong as it used to be. There's even been a couple of years at Monash Medicine now where it has many Jewish students, which is unthinkable.
Well, this is the thing. By the third generation, we all get lazy, don't we?
Now they're all building apps.
So, they're doing apps, or they're doing like improv classes.
Yeah, so and cafes. So that's changed a little bit, but it's definitely a much more sports-minded community than it used to be, which I thought was a good time to also to cash on that, I think, as well, in writing the book, that people say, actually, we've got a pretty good story to tell.
Yeah, no, it's terrific. So for people who are interested, it's out now, so no need to... I've seen it in a bunch of bookstores when I've been around, but it's also, you can buy it through peopleoftheboot.com.au.
Yep.
And if you enter the code BOOT, you will get 10% off.
You get for $30.
Oh, and free postage.
Free postage.
Look at that. It's nationwide.
Nationwide, and if you live in certain postcodes, you'll just find it hand delivered to your door. Which is what I'm going after here. I've got a bit of a run to do.
Oh, yeah, look at that.
In the neighbourhood, so yeah.
Gee, you might even get to meet Ashley if you buy a book. That's it. Well, thank you for coming. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for the chance to talk about it. It's been a labour of love for a couple of years. I won't retire on it. As with books, you don't retire on books, but it was a passion project that needed to be done, and the next one might see if I can make a bit of the next book.
Excellent. All right. Thanks for coming in. And People of the Boot, it's out now through Hybrid Publishers. And
don't forget the podcast.
Oh, yes.
Four Horsemen.
Four Horsemen. We should add. Tell everyone who's on the. So this is a great AFL podcast.
This is Josh Kay, Ronnie Lerner, and Dan Cherney. Have all written for the book as well, and we podcast once a week.
Every Tuesday.
Monday night, Tuesday.
Tuesday comes out. So
have a bit of fun with that as well. So don't forget
the Four Horse and Horsemen spelt
HOARSEMEN. There's another way to pronounce it, but I won't go down.
Oh, thank you very much, and we'll speak to everyone soon.